What if I told you the iPhone's killer AI wasn't a single genius model, but 1,000 tiny backstage tricks that make your phone feel psychic? Welcome to Unboxd Origins. I'm Howie, your resident science geek and accidental trivia sponge.
And I'm Wyatt. I ask the big questions. Sometimes philosophical, often skeptical, always curious.
Today we're digging into how did Apple Intelligence become the iPhone's killer AI feature? To tell this story, we have to rewind a little, back to Siri, the original voice assistant stunt from 2011 that felt like magic, but was actually fragile glue, holding a lot of different systems together. Apple long ago planted the seeds, buying up tiny AI teams, building the neural engine into its chips so phones could do serious math without sending everything to the cloud, and quietly funding teams to wrestle with privacy, encryption, and human-centered design. Those investments were boring at the time. Acquisitions quietly named Turi, 2016, Perceptio, around 2015, and a handful of others. But they stitched together the infrastructure Apple needed to do something different from the get-go. Local, private intelligence that sits inside the OS, instead of looking like a third-party add-on. Then the rest of the tech world had that very loud aha. You remember? ChatGPT exploded in 2022, and everyone realized large language models could appear to understand things in ways older systems couldn't. Apple watched this with a mix of admiration and alarm. Internally, teams pivoted from thinking about Siri as a voice UI to Siri as a system-wide collaborator. Secret demos started circulating inside Apple Park, assistants that could summarize a week of messages into a paragraph, rewrite an email in your exact professional voice, or take a blurry photo of a whiteboard and turn it into a bullet point plan. Those demos were deliberately humble, no fireworks, just small tasks happening smoothly. If you've used Apple Intelligence features, you're seeing the heirloom of those demos. Tiny experiences stitched into mail, photos, messages, and the keyboard, each doing one thing well. The clever part of the engineering playbook was orchestration. Apple didn't try to win by building the biggest model on the market. It designed a system that decides in real time where the heavy lifting should happen. If a task needs enormous compute, say synthesizing a long document or generating high-fidelity generative images, Apple Intelligence routes it to a carefully vetted cloud model. If it's a highly personal task, summarizing your private notes, creating a reply in your personal tone, or recognizing a friend in your photos, the work happens on device using compressed, distilled models accelerated by the neural engine. That split lets Apple offer capability and privacy simultaneously. Behind the scenes, engineers build context snapshots, ephemeral bundles of the parts of your device state the assistant needs, selected local files, recent chats, calendar items that are encrypted, processed, and then discarded normally so the assistant can be useful without hoovering up your whole life. Rolling out features was its own art form. Instead of proclaiming a single dramatic new product, Apple spread Apple Intelligence across the OS the way a seasoning is sprinkled. Slightly different flavor in mail, summaries, and rewording. In photos, AI-generated captions and visual search. In notes, auto-summaries. And in the keyboard, smart suggestions and paraphrasing. Developers got APIs to plug into these capabilities, but crucially, Apple kept the assistant as an OS-level service so it could access contextual hooks standard apps can't. Testing didn't happen only in labs. It was a slow, staged rollout across millions of devices, small groups, telemetry, human review, so every feature either felt trustworthy or got killed quietly. That low-drama deployment strategy made the difference between people being spooked by an overreaching assistant and simply finding their weekly meeting notes tidied up without fanfare.
Aha! Here's the twist most stories miss. Apple's real advantage was never raw intelligence or flashy, chatty brains. It was trust and timing. Apple used decades of user trust about privacy, about updates that don't break things, and converted that into permission to touch the intimate parts of your phone. People are more likely to let an assistant look at their messages if they believe the company won't monetize those words. Also, Apple didn't try to be first in AI novelty. It positioned Apple Intelligence as a reliability layer. small, private, and useful. That's an unusual strategy in a market that worships the biggest model. Apple's move wasn't to chase the crown, but to become the helper that never gets in the way.
Exactly. And that strategy demanded some heavy engineering 1-2 punches. First, model compression techniques, distillation, quantization, pruning made it feasible to run surprisingly capable language and vision models inside a phone without melting the battery. Second, hardware-software co-design pushed the neural engine and other accelerators to squeeze performance out of every clock cycle while keeping energy consumption down. Third, security plumbing. Secure enclave-protecting keys in private material, on-device key management, ephemeral context snapshots kept privacy promises credible. Another lesser-known trick was latency smoothing. Instead of letting a slow cloud call jerk the UI, Apple designed graceful fallbacks. If the cloud response is late, the phone uses a local pared-down inference to provide an interim result and then replaces it with the richer cloud result when ready. Users perceive that as speed and reliability, and perception matters almost as much as raw capability. There's also a product psychology game at play. People form habits around tiny conveniences. An automatically summarized thread, a one-tap photo caption, a Siri suggestion that actually understands your phrasing. Multiply that across hundreds of millions of users and the cumulative value skyrockets. It's why Apple chose to bake intelligence into existing routines rather than slap an AI label on a separate app. It reduced cognitive friction. The Assistant is not a separate thing you summon for big tasks. It's a feature that quietly makes small parts of your day less noisy. That's why in many countries, a large fraction of users enabled at least one Apple Intelligence feature within weeks of rollout, because it felt less like adopting a new mode of life and more like receiving a better version of the phone they already knew.
And another aha! The killer quality isn't feature count, it's combinatorial layering. A summarizer alone is useful. A summarizer that knows your calendar, your recent messages, and the attachments in an email. That's transformative. By being an OS-level intelligence, Apple can combine many modest capabilities to create unexpectedly powerful outcomes. So the Assistant doesn't have to be the most brilliant monologue machine. It merely needs to be the most effective multi-tool, because it can borrow pieces of context from many corners of the device. That makes everyday tasks smoother in ways users never asked for, but quickly come to expect.
Of course, it's not flawless. Engineers had to wrestle with bias in models, hallucinations, and the inevitable edge cases where a suggested rewrite changes nuance in ways a user didn't want. Apple's approach has been conservative. Present suggestions as editable drafts, give users control to opt out of specific features, and log failures for human review rather than burying them. Regulators and competitors have also pushed the company to be transparent about when a cloud call happens and whether third-party models were used. That pressure shaped the product. Apple built visible privacy controls, Clio permission prompts, and settings that let people choose how much of their content the Assistant can access. Those choices slow feature rollouts, but they also reduce the likelihood of a high-profile misstep that would erode trust overnight. Implications are broad. For users, Apple Intelligence promises a phone that feels more like a colleague than a tool. One that translates tone, summarizes complexity, or fetches the right photo without being creepy. For developers, Apple opening APIs means smaller teams can build on top of Apple's contextual plumbing instead of reinventing user data handling and privacy safeguards. For competitors, the message is clear. Raw model size isn't the whole game. Integration, trust, and feature design at scale matter enormously. If you're an antitrust or privacy regulator, the story's a mixed bag. Apple is protecting user data more than some of its rivals, but its centralization of contextual power raises its own questions about platform control.
So why should we care, ultimately? Because Apple's path shows a possible blueprint for mainstream AI adoption that avoids the "let's put a giant model on everything" trap. It's not about creating a single omniscient assistant that knows everything about everyone. It's about weaving useful, private, context-aware helpers into the fabric of daily life. Gradually, cautiously, and in ways that let people test the water. Technology becomes not just novel, but adoptable.
In short, Apple Intelligence became a killer feature by being quietly pragmatic. It is the product of years of groundwork, hardware, acquisitions, and privacy engineering, punctuated by the lightning of large models and tamed through orchestration, staged rollouts, and user trust. Apple didn't try to hypnotize us with one dramatic demo. It made lots of small moments better, and those moments added up into a feature people actually use.
And that's the human story. When you build AI that respects people's expectations, that fits into routines, and that swaps bravado for usefulness, it stops being a novelty and starts being a necessity. Whether that's good or bad depends on how responsibly Apple and the industry keep those choices.
If you liked this deep dive into Apple Intelligence, hit like, subscribe, and share so more people can see how everyday tech gets made. So, was it one genius model or 1,000 backstage tricks making your phone feel psychic? That, dear viewer, is the question we started with.